Welcome to the Londero Lounge, the man, the myth, the legend, episode 3, Behind the Scrubs. I just have a disclaimer, ladies and gentlemen. Location and other information will be censored for privacy reasons in this session. Good morning, Dad.
Good morning, Callie.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And you?
Very, very well. Are you ready to get into it?
I certainly am.
What year did you begin your nursing career?
I began my nursing career in March 1977.
That's a very short and sweet answer.
The year and month I began, I can't remember the exact date.
Who inspired you in your early years as a nurse?
There were several nurses that inspired me early on. My first junior charge nurse, his name was Ron Davidson. He kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. Lots of other nurses. When you saw a nurse doing something that you thought was exceptional, you tried to pick up that skill and mimic that person in those situations. But yeah, Ron Davidson was the nurse that initially got me off on my career on the right foot.
Why did you choose to become a psychiatric nurse?
Well, I had a choice. They were looking at the same time for uh, males to become maternity nurses or midwives, but I had friends that went into psych, so yeah, that's why I chose psych.
Was the job interview process very different in the 70s and 80s? Any memorable questions?
The the interview process was hugely different. You just rocked up out to the the nursing office, and they gave you a sheet to fill in, which was just mainly details about your birth and where you lived and any previous jobs. Filled that in, and then they called you in, and you had an interview. It was a very quick interview. They asked you if you were able to look after yourself because it was a bit dangerous in those times. If you'd played football, because we had a football team, and if you were interested in playing the football team, then you would go and play football on Saturday, and they'd give you an overtime on Sunday to make up for it. Yeah, those kind of questions. They also asked if you could fight, which was a bit crazy. But anyway, I don't know if that was an official question or whether that was just the guy that interviewed me asked me that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that'd be on the selection criteria.
No,
Did you play with the football team out at
no, I didn't know. My football career was well over by then. I was interested in motorcycles and other things.
What are some of the more memorable teams you have worked with in your career and why?
In Uambi, which was the medical unit of the hospital, it was like where all our clients who aren't unwell and needed drips and drains and who had just returned from surgery, they all rolled in there, and they taught me all the basic medical stuff that I, based my career on. The admission unit, when I started there in the early 80s, everybody was great. Like, you know, everybody was on the team and fitted in well, and we all got on well, and we're all pretty much around the same age, like late 20s, early 30s. I had some really good teams in some of the geriatric units where you needed to work really hard and work together to get the job done. If someone wasn't working, then it made it for a really hard day. If you had like 20 showers and that of a morning that you had to finish before 7:30, you had to get people out of bed, shower them, dress them, and get them to the dining room, those kind of things, because many of our clients were in wheelchairs and that kind of stuff. Later on, working with disabilities, there were several great teams there as well. Ward 4 team, they were really amazing. Ward 3 team. And just lately, it was my go-to unit with a wonderful number of staff there that have a joke and got to work really hard as well and cover everybody's ass. Couldn't ask for more.
Side question, was Ward 16 the admissions unit?
Yes, yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
And that was the one where you opened the first door, locked it, went through the second door and locked it?
Yes.
And this is a...
That was your introduction to psychiatric
Yes,
nursing.
and I still remember going in there one time, and despite everything I saw, I thought that was the weird person, one of the staff members. I looked at him and I was just like, oh, I don't know about this guy. And I would have been knee high to a grasshopper.
He had
Yeah.
a shaved head and he had a really big handlebar moustache
And earrings.
and earrings.
Yeah. But even with all the patients and everything, I was like, oh. What was your graduation like?
We had a graduation ball upstairs in the ex-services club. Every year they had a ball for the graduation team, and lots of dignitaries turned up, and so we're all put on stage and presented with our certificates and that kind of stuff. I was actually offered a job, the representative from Long Bay Jail's psych unit, and he told me they were opening up a 60-bed unit and they wanted staff to work it, and he'd be pleased for me to attend a job down there, but I wasn't interested in leaving at that time. About that time too, I was also offered a job to work in America. There was a team that went around through the psych hospitals trying to recruit staff that had best practice in the world. So they came over to Australia and tried to steal nurses for the Betty Ford Clinic and great big psych hospitals that were over in America. And I thought about it, but your mother wasn't interested in going over there at all. We talked about it, and that was about as far as that got.
I guess it's hard when you have family
Of course, yeah.
to make big decisions like that, even though they're amazing opportunities.
That's right. And they were going to pay all expenses, all flights over, accommodation, insurances, a wage that was much better than what was here in Australia. Plus, over there, staff were allowed to accept gifts from the patients, and those patients that were like the Betty Ford Clinic were often gave rather expensive presents to people that helped them, because that's where a lot of the stars went.
Well, in the long run, at least we're not under Trump's regime and we're here in
That's
Australia.
true. That's exactly true.
Floor nurse or manager?
Well, I've done both, but I prefer to be a floor nurse. I prefer to work on the floor.
Any reasoning to that? The pros and cons?
Well, because I've got patient contact. That's been the big thing of my nursing career is patient contact. Although many years I was a manager, and that's got its own set of demands as well. But it's sort of you're not in contact with the clients, and so that's my big thing. I love that interaction.
Was there always self-defense training like VPM?
No self-defense training. I first came across in the late 80s, early 90s. The best defence course was the part training that was offered by the Disabilities Department. A well respected course. I actually did train the trainer in Sydney. We were all sent down for a week to do the trainer course. The guy that ran it was probably one of the best. Well, he actually adjudicated martial arts like tournaments and stuff like that. He developed this course, and it was a really good course.
How were you paid back in the day?
We were paid in cash. You turned up at the nursing office on the payroll department, which had its own barn door, and they opened the top half of the barn door, and nurses lined up and signed for their pay packet and counted the cash in front of the payroll staff, so there was no problem with whether or not you were shortchanged or whatever.
And then where did you go from there? Did you put the money in the bank? Did you go and pay all your bills in cash? How did that work?
Yeah, paid the bills in cash, and if there was something left over, then you put it in put it in the bank.
Night shift or day shift?
Well, that's changed over the years. When I was younger, I liked night shift because you did 2 weeks work in 1 week, and then you had the next week to do overtime. So next week off to do overtime. But as I got older, the demands on night duty were too much, and they just knock you around too much. So I now prefer day shift or afternoon shift.
I still remember when I wouldn't get told I was given overtime shifts when I was living with you in Molong in my early 20s. Would put me on overtime and then maybe tell you at the last second to bring me in, and that's how I got overtime, so much overtime. Oh, your dad's working a shift, so you're working too. More often than not, there'd be 15 shifts, straight before a day off, or your day off would be you came home Monday morning after 7 12-hour night shifts straight, and then you'd be back at work Tuesday morning and work through to Sunday on day shifts. Swaps.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Sue. Round two.
What did uniforms look like throughout the years?
When I first began, the uniform was grey pants, grey cardigan, dark blue parka, and either a white shirt for a registered nurse or a light blue shirt for a trainee nurse. For the ladies, they had red cardigans, they had a dark blue dress for the registered nurses and a light blue dress for the trainee nurses. And there were also sooties, which were students out of training. So these were the staff that had made it through third year but never sat their registration exams. For one reason or another, they were worried they might not pass. And if you failed an exam, that was pretty much you had to resign. So, and they wore the same uniform as the trainee nurses.
That's really rough. If you fail, you had to resign.
Yeah, that was the way all the way through. Or you had a post. You did the exam. If you failed the exam, you had a post, and if you failed that, you were out.
And how many years did you have to be in training?
Well, it was nominated as 3 years, but lots of nurses took a long time to train. They stopped and started their training and wouldn't do exams and things like that. Went on like people like Marty Smith and myself took 10 years to register.
How does it feel to have created a nursing legacy?
Well, it feels wonderful. Yep, I'm so proud of my nursing legacy. So proud. I'm proud of all my children, but there's a special sort of part in my heart for the nursing team because of what we share.
The Rat House nurses?
The Rat House nurses, yes.
Was there a designated crying area?
No crying areas. Psych nurses were made of steel. If someone needed a good cry, they went to the staff room or something like that, and there were always other nurses around to pull them through it.
What are the biggest changes in nursing have you witnessed?
Everything's changed in nursing since I started. Every single thing.
In every single way?
In every single way. The way clients were managed. When I first started, it was very regimented. There were a lot of staff that were ex-army people. Every day when the supervisor came around, or what we call campus nurse manager now, the staff had to line up in order of seniority to greet the campus nurse manager as they came in. Nurses were responsible for cleaning or directing groups of patients to do all the cleaning. Nurses were responsible for gardening as well. And by cleaning, I mean inside and outside windows and upstairs windows, floors with polishes, and every night the night staff mopped the floors of the day rooms, and in that respect it changed. All the medications are used differently. We had some of the meds then that we still use, like chlorpromazine, but back then it was mostly dished out in liquid, and you'd have a Duralex glass with a line on it in nail polish, and you filled it up to that, or 2 lines, and you fill the Largactil up to that line and give it to the patient. We had drugs like paraldehyde. You needed glass syringes to give it because it would melt the plastic syringes. They had their own needles that you had to sharpen, and you had to sterilise these on the unit. Many of the other instruments that you used were sterilised on the unit as well, scissors and forceps and things like that. So there were very few disposable single-use items. Cognitive therapies were just starting. When I started my career, I was actually told by the Director of Nursing, the group that we were going through with, were the beginning of the nursing model that would change what was happening in psych hospitals from merely just like prisons, where people were just looked after like that and fed and all that kind of stuff, to actually using different modalities of treatments. So we had all sorts of group therapies that we'd run. It's constantly, because of best practice and those kind of incentives, things have continually changed, and mostly for the better, I believe.
Sounds like the wild, wild west.
No, it was
Jeez.
the wild, wild west when I first started.
If you didn't pursue a career in nursing, what would have you chosen?
Hmm.
These are the hard questions.
Yeah, I don't really know. How do you know until you do?
See, I was thinking you'd go down the motorcycle route and be like, yeah, I'd be like a mechanic.
No. I like something where you interact with people.
All right, scrubs or casual clothes?
Well, I've done both over the years. I like casualness of casual clothes, but scrubs are great too. Uniforms are great because if something happens to them, they're easily replaced. And yeah, either one, I'm comfortable with either.
Yeah, I remember you just didn't have a uniform when we were kids.
No, there was no uniform. It was casual.
It's like, I don't know. I don't know why you guys didn't wear uniforms. But like growing up and like understanding it, it's just like it breaks down barriers
Yes,
like between you and the clients.
that's right. And we did a lot of community stuff. So if you're in a uniform, and you see it nowadays with staff taking someone into town, you see them straight away, don't you? So you spot the uniform and you know, and I'm sure other people like that don't work there still spot the uniform.
PO or PR? I'm kidding, Dad. What is the preferred method you prefer to giving medications?
Whatever's indicated at the time, it doesn't. I have no worry in giving any medications, whether it's oral, IM, or PR per rectum. I don't do it so much now, but when in geriatric wards and that, bowel care was always a thing, and you always had to PR someone, which is check hard pieces in their bowel before giving enemas and those kind of things.
To add on to that, why did people take temperatures like PR?
It was not a thing in psych.
Okay.
I think it's more a thing with pediatrics and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And it'll give you a better temp than any other way, a more accurate temp. Although very often you'd see on the wall and there'd be two sort of, when we had glass thermometers, there'd be two, you'd put them in antiseptic material in them, and there'd be labels on them like PO. Just, start being funny.
EMR or paper based?
I like the EMR now. I've done both. Paper based for most of my career, but the last 10 years has been computers, and yeah, I like computers when they're working.
Yeah.
When they're not working, it's a bit frustrating. There's less chance of misreading medications. I know you're always checking for errors and things like that, but they seem to stand out more on the computer when you're looking at the overall picture than they can do in paper based, and it's easy to write notes and stuff like that. Gets you to do more than just writing a couple of lines in a file. Encourage you to be a bit more giving with your notes.
Ease of access. Like on the computer, you have literally everything right in front of you. You have their meds, their notes, their results.
Yes, all that sort of stuff. You don't have to go looking in charts.
And you can read doctors' writing.
All that, yep. You can read doctors' writing. That's a big thing. That's a really big thing.
And that concludes episode 3 of The Man, the Myth, the Legend. Thank you for being at the Londero Lounge today.